What actually is happiness? It's one of the oldest and most argued about questions in human history. Philosophers have debated this question for centuries. Wellness influencers now try to bottle it, package it, and sell it to you. TikTok gives you 23 different answers in under 5 minutes scrolling. And then some people will say that happiness comes from having a good job that pays you well. Other people will say that you find happiness if you drink green smoothies, do cold plunges, and you wake up at 4 a.m. every morning to journal by candlelight. And yet, with so many people chasing happiness, with so many people pursuing happiness, why does happiness still feel so elusive? Well, if you stick with me for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you through what happiness really is and what it definitely isn't, and why most people are looking for happiness in all of the wrong places. And as fair warning, this could change your entire perspective on life. Let's go. Now, in case we haven't met yet, my name is Declan Edwards. I'm a happiness researcher, author, and coach. And for the last 10 years, I've been helping people and organizations master the skills and science of happiness. I made my life's work for this, so much to the point that I opened a social enterprise called BU Happiness College, where my team and I teach this stuff, all of the stuff and research around happiness psychology full time. And I've started this YouTube channel as a way where I can share everything that I've learned over the last decade of study and practice in a way that's evidence-based, real, and hopefully relatable along the way. So if you do want to feel a little less lost and more fulfilled in life, then hit subscribe early. Let's make sense of this thing called happiness, and let's unpack a question that we've been wrestling with as a society for thousands of years. What actually is happiness? All right, this is an important point to start on. After years of researching, coaching, and conversations that I've had with people about happiness, I can confidently say one thing to you. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all answer to happiness. I know I've lured you in with the old YouTube clickbait of saying this is the answer to happiness, only to say to you, I don't have it. I don't think anyone has it. Aristotle doesn't have the one answer that fits everyone. Gwyneth Paltrow doesn't have the one answer that fits everyone. TikTok certainly doesn't have the answer that fits everyone. I don't think anyone, including myself, has this one-size silver bullet strategy for happiness that's going to work for 8 billion people on the planet. And that's largely because happiness isn't a single destination. It's not even just one emotion. It's not something that you achieve and then you're done, right? The goal is not to go, hey, I'll be happy when, and then you achieve something and then get it. That's just going to lead to a life of chasing happiness, but never actually feeling happy. Now, what I've found over the last decade is happiness is so much more personal and dynamic than that. Now, don't worry, that's actually really good news that there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to happiness. I know at first that can feel a bit scary and intimidating and worrying. The good news of it is it means you get to define happiness on your own terms. You get to bring sense and clarity to what I call your happiness blueprint. Now, there are a few frameworks that can help you do that. And in this video, I'm going to share them with you. Let me show you how. But first, let's go back a little bit. I already mentioned earlier that we've been arguing about happiness for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks were obsessed with it. They didn't use the word happiness. They called it eudaimonia. Aristotle thought it came from living a virtuous and meaningful life, whereas Epicurus thought it was about avoiding pain and maximizing pleasure. He was a real sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of guy. Fast forward to now, and we have an entire self-help and wellness industry built around the idea of commercializing, packaging, and selling happiness as a lifestyle. There's so many people on here that say, hey, if you want to be happy, you need to do vision boards, green juice, luxury travel, 5 a.m. routines that are 4 hours long. Look, don't get me wrong. I love a good smoothie as much as anyone else, but the problem is too many of us are chasing somebody else's version of happiness rather than looking inwards and defining happiness on our own terms. And as a result, so many people, and perhaps even yourself, are spending years of their life climbing a ladder of success only to get to the top and go, this ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. I never wanted to be here in the first place. So if we're not going to think about happiness as an outcome, if we're not going to think about happiness as something that we achieve, if we're not going to think about happiness as this roadmap of go to school, get the job, get the partner, travel once or twice a year, if we're not going to think of happiness through that lens, how should we think of happiness? For me personally, as a happiness researcher and someone who's dedicated their career to the study of happiness, I first and foremost like to think of happiness not as an individual feeling, but as an umbrella term that catches a whole range of emotions. Happiness is not just one fleeting feeling. It's a whole category of emotional experience. So for example, joy, contentment, gratitude, excitement, love, hope, peacefulness, all of those are part of what we would call the happiness umbrella. And there's a tool that we use at BU Happiness College to display this and to teach this. It's called the feelings wheel. In the center of the feelings wheel are the broad emotions like happiness, anger, fear, and sadness. But as we move outwards, we become more specific and more nuanced in our emotional experience. Under that central term of happiness, we are going to find all these other terms like joy, pride, playfulness, calm, curiosity, and even inspiration. And what I've found is when people see happiness through this lens, it does a couple of amazing things for them. First and foremost, we realize that we don't have to experience happiness in the same way every day. You're going to go through difficult chapters of life where if you only thought of happiness as joy or accomplishment and thought of it as this real fleeting, dopamine-driven, yellow smiley face experience, there's going to be chapters where you would say, I'm not happy because I'm not experiencing that type of happiness. But maybe in those chapters, happiness is still present. It's just in a different form. So for example, I know when I've gone through chapters in my life of grief and loss, I've also experienced happiness in the form of connection and gratitude. Now, it's not the main dish. If you asked me, in those chapters of my life, how are you feeling? I wouldn't immediately say happy. I say, hey, I'm grieving. I'm feeling sad. It would be under the sad, better of emotions on the feelings wheel. But I'm also feeling, as a side course to the main dish of sadness, I'm also experiencing connection, love, gratitude. There have also been times in my life where I go through immense stress and challenge, and I hope this is true for you as well. And in those times of stress and challenge, I've felt meaning, purpose, contribution. I've felt resilience. These are all forms of happiness. So while I may not categorize those chapters as necessarily happy chapters, it doesn't mean I didn't experience happiness in some way, shape, or form there. And this leads to the second thing that this broadening of our understanding and definition of happiness does for people. It allows us to stop putting the expectation on ourselves that we're meant to feel happy all the time as some big dopamine party 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and instead encourages us to get curious with our emotions and to play with our emotions and explore our emotions and see what form happiness is accessible in. I mentioned before, in times of grief, if you can experience gratitude, that's still a really meaningful experience of happiness, and it will support your mental health, your flourishing, and your well-being. Or you might feel a sense of pride when you go through a stressful period and get through the other side. That is still a really valuable experience of happiness. And research backs this up. And Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who's one of the pioneers in positive psychology, came with this theory called broaden and build. And what that does is it shows that even small amounts of positive emotion, when we recognize them and we name them and we allow ourselves to experience them, that builds resilience and meaning over time and expands our likelihood of experiencing those emotions again, rather than just overlooking them and saying, hey, all of my life for the last week has been stressful. Well, probably in that stress, there's been a moment of happiness or an expression of happiness. We just needed to broaden our definition. So again, happiness isn't about ignoring the hard stuff. It's about expanding our emotional vocabulary and our understanding so that we can see what else is present for us even in those times of emotional difficulty. And once we broaden our perspective of happiness and we broaden our vocabulary around happiness, it allows us to do something else that's remarkably meaningful and beautiful. And it's something that I've dedicated my career to helping people with. We learn that happiness is not just a range of feelings. It's also a skill set. And like any skill set, be it cooking, learning the guitar, learning another language, it's something that you can practice and get better at over time. So thanks to something called neuroplasticity, we're able to train our brain, learn new skills, rewire ourselves based on what we do, what we think, and what we practice, and what we focus on. So if we expand our definition of happiness and we're able to find happiness in more places and experience happiness in more places, it literally rewires our brain to start cultivating more happiness. And then this gets expanded and sped up by practicing certain skills that have previously been called soft skills. We now call them happiness skills or human skills. I'm talking skills like setting better boundaries, communication, self-awareness, empathy, emotional intelligence. When we practice all these things, we know from the research that they're conducive to and supportive of living a happier life. Now, the goal here is not to feel happy all the time as our primary emotion. All of our emotions have value. I love the saying, if we hope to live a fulfilled life, we must expect that we will experience the full range of human emotion. The goal is about building the skills that make happiness more accessible more often, and about broadening our definition and perspective of happiness to experience it in its whole myriad of ways, rather than only focusing on happiness as joy, excitement, or accomplishment. And that's what this entire channel is about, teaching you the skills and giving you the vocabulary and frameworks and language to expand your experience of happiness, live a happier life, and contribute to the happiness of those around you care most about. So I hope you picked up from this video that happiness isn't a destination. It's not just one emotion. It's definitely not just a hashtag on TikTok or social media. It's not something that, Gwyneth Paltrow or any other wellness influencer is trying to sell you. Happiness is a broad, evolving experience. It's deeply personal, and most importantly, it is learnable. Now, in my next YouTube video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 4 distinct stages of skill set mastery that are applicable to any skill you want to learn, be it an instrument, a language, cooking, or in this case, learning the skills and science of happiness. You must go through the same 4 levels in order to master it. And I'm going to share why level 2 is the hardest one, when most people get stuck, frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed, and they just give up. I'm going to share with you why that happens and how to get through it. So if this video resonated, if you're curious about the skills and science of happiness and you want to keep learning them, make sure you give this video a like, leave a comment sharing what you learned from it, what your key takeaway was, and make sure you click subscribe as well so you don't miss the next videos that are coming up. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to live a life that feels fulfilling, a life that is happy, and a life where you can contribute to the happiness of others. And I hope I get to play a little part in helping you build that life together. See you next time.